A single dad took his little girl out for pancakes, but what happened across the diner changed everything. The waitress flinched when a man touched her hand. Everyone else looked away, except him. What this dad did next left the entire diner speechless. And here's the twist. If you were sitting in that booth, would you have stepped in or stayed silent? Comment what you would have done, because this ending might just surprise you. The diner smelled of sizzling bacon and sweet maple syrup, its red vinyl booths squeaking faintly every time someone shifted. Saturday mornings had a rhythm of their own here, coffee mugs steaming, forks clinking, and voices blending into a low hum. For Mark, it was more than just breakfast. These mornings were his anchor. Sitting across from his 7-year-old daughter Sophie, he could almost forget the heaviness of single fatherhood. He leaned back, letting the warmth of his coffee spread through him, and watched Sophie battle her pancakes with unshakable determination. Syrup ran in rivers across her plate, her small knife slipping again and again. "Daddy, it keeps moving," she complained, furrow on her brow. Mark smiled. "Try holding the fork steady with your other hand. You've got this." Sophie obeyed, tongue peeking out in concentration. At last, she carved a crooked triangle, her eyes shining with victory. She popped it into her mouth, syrup dripping down her chin. Mark slid a napkin toward her, suppressing a laugh. These were the moments that mattered. Messy, ordinary, unforgettable. But then, out of the corner of his eye, something unsettled him. Their waitress, Emily, moved quickly between tables. Her smile was flawless. The kind servers practiced keep shifts smooth, yet her shoulders were stiff, her laughter sharp, and every time she passed the counter, the same man leaned toward her. His mug sat forgotten, his eyes locked on her like a predator circling prey. At first, Mark tried to brush it off. Maybe it was nothing. But when Emily set down his plate and the man's fingers brushed hers, she flinched. Just a small recoil, almost invisible to the rest of the diner, but not to Mark. Sophie tugged at his sleeve, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Daddy," she looked scared. Her words hit harder than anything. If even a child could sense it, then it was real. Mark's chest tightened. He looked around. Other customers stared at their food, pretending not to notice. The cook clattered pans in the back. Emily's eyes flicked once, just once, toward the kitchen door, as if calculating how long it would take to disappear. Mark's instincts screamed at him. Years of fatherhood had sharpened his radar for danger. And right now, everything about Emily's body language told him she needed help. But should he intervene? His daughter was watching. If he ignored it, Sophie would learn a dangerous lesson, that when someone's in trouble, you look away. Mark's heart pounded. The decision was already forming. He couldn't stay seated much longer. Mark's palms rested against the table, steady but tense. He caught Emily's eyes again, just for a second, and the mask slipped. Behind her forced smile was fear, raw and unguarded. That was all he needed. "Stay here, Soph," he said quietly, sliding out of the booth. Sophie's wide eyes followed him. "Daddy, what are you going to do?" "Just finish your pancakes," he reassured, forcing a calm smile he didn't feel. The diner seemed to shrink as Mark walked toward the counter. Conversations hushed, as if people sensed a shift but didn't want to acknowledge it. The man at the counter leaned back, smirking, his hand brushing the rim of his coffee cup. Emily froze in place, tray trembling slightly in her hands. "Is there a problem here?" Mark's voice carried, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the diner's hum. The man's eyes flicked toward him, narrowing. "Mind your business. I'm just having a friendly chat." Emily's silence was deafening. Her lips parted as if to respond, but no words came out. She glanced down, gripping her tray tighter. Mark took another step closer, keeping his body loose but firm, blocking the man's view of her. "Doesn't look too friendly from here." A laugh broke from the man, harsh and mocking. "And what are you, her knight in shining armor?" He leaned in, his voice dropping venomously. "Go back to your pancakes, Dad." That word, Dad, wasn't taunt. It was fuel. Mark felt Sophie's eyes burning into his back from across the diner. He wasn't just responding for Emily's sake. He was teaching his daughter, right now, what it meant to stand up when it mattered. Emily's voice cracked through the tension. "Please, just stop." It was barely above a whisper, but it was enough to confirm everything. Mark's jaw tightened. He shifted slightly, placing himself fully between her and the man. "She asked you to stop? That means you're done." The man scoffed, pushing up from his stool. He was taller up close, his shadow stretching across the counter. "You think you can tell me what to do?" The diner had gone silent. Forks hovered in midair. Coffee mugs paused halfway to lips. Everyone was watching, but no one moved. Mark held his ground, his voice low and controlled. "I don't think. I know. You don't get to make her uncomfortable. Not here. Not anywhere." For a moment, The man stared him down, eyes cold and calculating. Emily shifted back, her breath shaky. Sophie's small face peeked over the booth, worry etched in every line. The man's smirk faltered, replaced by something darker. He leaned closer, his voice a hiss. "You're making a mistake." Mark didn't flinch. No, the mistake was thinking nobody would stand up. The tension was unbearable, every second stretching like an eternity. The air seemed to crackle as the diner held its collective breath. And then the man's chair screeched as he shoved it back, his body angling forward. Emily gasped, and Sophie's frightened cry rang across the diner. Mark braced himself. The confrontation was far from over. The sound of the chair scraping across the floor jolted the diner into stillness. The man pushed himself up, his shoulders squaring as though ready to make a scene. Emily's tray rattled in her trembling hands. Sophie's frightened voice carried across the booth. "Daddy?" Mark raised a calming hand toward his daughter without taking his eyes off the man. His pulse thundered, but his voice remained steady. "You need to back off. Right now." The man sneered, stepping closer, the sour smell of stale coffee clinging to him. "Or what? You gonna play the hero in front of your kid?" Mark didn't flinch. He leaned forward just enough for his words to land clear and firm. "No, I'm going to show my kid what it means to protect someone when they can't protect themselves." A murmur rippled through the diner. People shifted in their seats, eyes darting between the two men. For once, the silence didn't feel like indifference. It felt like the room holding its breath, waiting for someone to draw the line. Emily took a shaky step back. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but her voice failed. The weight of all those shifts, all those unwanted comments, seemed to sit on her shoulders. The man leaned in closer, his jaw tightening. But before he could speak, the diner owner, a stocky man with flour-dusted hands from the kitchen, emerged and slammed a towel onto the counter. "That's enough." His booming voice cut through the tension like a whip. "Get out of my diner before I call the cops." The man's bravado flickered. He glanced around, suddenly aware of the stares. For the first time, the other customers weren't avoiding eye contact. They were watching him, judging him, waiting for him to leave. He tried one last smirk, but it came out hollow with a muttered curse. He shoved past a chair and stormed toward the door. The bell above it jingled as he left, the sound strangely triumphant. Emily's breath shuddered out of her. She gripped the counter as though the floor might fall away. Mark turned to her, his expression softening. "You okay?" She nodded weakly, eyes glistening. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to," Mark replied. "You already said enough." Across the diner, Sophie scrambled from the booth and ran to him, wrapping her arms tight around his waist. "Daddy, I was so scared." Mark crouched down, smoothing her hair. "I know, sweetheart. But you were brave, and you saw why it's important to stand up for people." Sophie nodded into his chest, her little voice muffled. "You're my hero." The owner gave Mark a firm pat on the shoulder. "Not many people would have done what you did. You've got my respect." Emily, still shaken, managed a small but genuine smile. "Thank you. You reminded me, not everyone looks away." The diner slowly returned to its hum. Coffee poured, silverware clinked, but the atmosphere had shifted. Something invisible lingered in the air, a shared understanding that kindness and courage could silence cruelty. Mark guided Sophie back to their booth, his chest finally loosening. For the first time that morning, he allowed himself a sip of his cooling coffee. Sophie tugged at his sleeve, her wide eyes still full of wonder. "Daddy, you think she'll be okay now?" Mark glanced at Emily, who met his eyes with a grateful nod. "Yeah," he said softly, "she will be." The world outside kept moving, cars rushing past, and people hurrying on with their lives. But inside that little diner, for just a moment, hope felt louder than fear.